The chamber of the Galactic Council was the most powerful place in the known universe. Here, in a vast dome of glass and crystal, leaders of thousands of species gathered. Their voices echoed across the hall, their decisions shaping the fate of stars and civilizations. Yet at the very heart of this chamber, among the shining thrones of the council races, stood a single chair that no one dared touch. It was not bright like the others. It was not carved from polished crystal or glowing stone. It was built of dark iron, cold and ancient. The symbol upon it was unlike the banners of the other races, two circles crossing with a smaller blue sphere at the center. The crest of Earth and the seat had always been empty. For centuries, it had stood like a shadow in the council chamber. No delegate ever arrived to claim it. No voice ever rose from Earth to join the decisions of the stars. At first, the council had waited. They sent messages, envoys, invitations. No response came. Then they stopped asking. They left the chair as a symbol, a reminder that Earth had once been offered a place among them. But as the centuries passed, silence grew heavy. Whispers spread through the galaxy. Some said Earth had been destroyed before it could join. Others believed humans were too primitive, too weak to take part in galactic affairs. But there were darker rumors too, rumors that Earth had refused the Council not out of weakness, but out of choice. And in the shadows of these whispers, fear began to grow. On this day, the council chamber rang with argument once again. Delegates shouted across the dome. A lizard-skinned elder from the Serkai pounded his claw against his throne. This cannot continue. The chair is a curse, a mockery. Why does Earth still have a place here when they never once appeared? From the opposite side, a feathered ambassador of the Corps hissed in reply, "Better an empty chair than humans sitting in it. Do you not remember the stories? Do you not recall the warnings left by our ancestors?" The chamber erupted in noise. Some demanded the seat be removed. Others demanded Earth be summoned again. In the shadows, unnoticed, one figure sat silently, taking notes. His name was Vela. He was not a council member. He was not a leader. He was a historian, young, curious, and reckless in ways that only the young could be. Vela had spent his short career digging into stories others preferred to forget, and nothing in all the galaxy fascinated him more than the mystery of Earth. When the council session ended, Vela retreated to the archives, vast halls of memory crystals, ancient scrolls, and data vaults that stretched beneath the council chamber itself. Here he searched for the earliest records of Earth's invitation. He read the faded words of old envoys who had been sent to Sol System. He studied the reports of fleets that had traveled near Earth's space and never returned. The deeper he searched, the stranger the records became. One entry described Earth as a death world, a planet so dangerous that life itself had been forged in constant struggle. Another claimed humans were not primitive at all, but masters of war, their weapons older and sharper than anything the council races had known. But the most troubling records were locked, files restricted to only the highest levels of the council. Records sealed for reasons no one explained. Vela should have stopped there, but he didn't. He began searching through forgotten corridors of the archive, the places even the keepers avoided. Dust lay thick on the data shelves. Some doors had not been opened in centuries, and there, hidden behind layers of broken consoles, he found a sealed compartment. Inside was a small black crystal, marked with a single phrase burned into its surface. For the day they ask why Earth never came, Vela's hands shook as he lifted the crystal. It was warm, as if it had been waiting for someone. He turned it in the light. The inscription glowed faintly, words written in the ancient standard tongue of the Council's founders, for the day they ask why Earth never came. He knew he should report it. He knew he should take it to the archivists, but curiosity burned brighter than caution. This was no ordinary record. This was a message left for a reason, hidden, buried and forgotten. If the council had gone to such lengths to conceal it, then the truth it carried must be dangerous. Perhaps too dangerous, and yet he could not resist. He carried the crystal back to his private study. He placed it into his reader, hands trembling. The lights dimmed. The air grew heavy. The crystal's surface shimmered. And then a voice spoke. It was old, cracked with age, and filled with fear. If you have found this, then the council has forgotten. If you are listening, then the warnings were ignored. Remember this truth and carry it with you. Earth does not sit among us, because Earth was never meant to. The hologram flickered, revealing the face of an ancient council elder. His eyes, wide with terror. Do not summon them, do not call them back, for humans do not join councils. Humans end them. The message ended. The crystal went dark. Vela sat frozen in silence, his blood cold. What had he just heard? Outside his study, the council chamber still glowed with debate. Delegates still shouted about whether Earth's chair should remain or whether humans should be invited once again. None of them knew the truth. None of them knew what Vela now held in his hands, a secret buried for centuries. A warning left by their ancestors, and he knew if he revealed it, the galaxy would never be the same again. The empty chair of Earth was not a mystery. It was a message, and the reason for its silence was far more terrifying than anyone in the council dared imagine. Vela leaned back, his hands trembling as he whispered to himself, "What are you, humans? And why are we so afraid to know the answer?" The camera fades to black. Under the dim glow of the council archives, Vela stared at the black crystal in silence. His pulse still raced, the voice of the ancient elder echoing in his ears. Humans do not join councils. Humans end them. The words refused to leave his mind. Outside, the galaxy debated Earth's empty seat like it was a simple riddle. Some wanted it erased. Others wanted to summon humanity at last. But none of them knew the truth hidden in this crystal. None of them understood why their ancestors had warned against ever calling Earth. Vela replayed the message again. The hologram sputtered, the old council elder's face warped by fear. His voice shook as though he spoke to something that was not in the room, as though he could feel eyes upon him even across the centuries. "If you are hearing this," the elder whispered, "it means you have forgotten the old war. It means you have grown arrogant enough to invite them back. But understand, humans are not like us. They were never meant to sit beside us. They were meant to stand above us." Then the message collapsed into silence once more. Vela's throat was dry. He wanted to believe it was only superstition, an old ghost story left behind to frighten future generations. Yet there had been no tremor of exaggeration in the elder's eyes. There was only fear, real fear, the kind no politician or liar could ever fake. He locked the crystal away in his private satchel, but even as he carried it, he felt as though the weight of it pressed against his chest, as if the crystal itself did not want to be hidden. He thought about speaking, about rising in the next council meeting and telling them what he had found. But what would happen? Would they believe him? Or would they silence him to keep the past buried? Later that night, he found himself walking the empty corridors of the archives again. He could not resist searching deeper. If the crystal was real, there had to be more, something older, something the council had not destroyed. His small lamp lit the dust of forgotten shelves as he passed row after row of abandoned memory stones. And then he found them, a set of records so ancient that even the data markings were crumbling away. He wiped the dust from one and pressed the activation rune. Static filled the air, followed by a fragment of sound. Screams, metallic roars, the sound of fleets burning. He pulled another stone. This one showed a map of a region of stars, tens of systems, but they were all marked with the same single word, extinct. The deeper he searched, the clearer the pattern became. At the dawn of the Council, before most member races even reached the stars, there had been a war so large it was never recorded in the public histories. And at the center of every battle, every erased system, one world appeared again and again: Earth. Vela leaned against the wall, trying to slow his breathing. Why had no one told them? Why were these records locked away, hidden in the dark, while the Council pretended that humanity was nothing but a minor, silent race? If Earth was so weak, so insignificant, then why were entire systems burned in their shadow? The next day the Council gathered again. The chamber was alive with anger, with demands. Delegates raised their voices in fury. "We must remove the chair," shouted the Sci-Fi elder. "It is a humiliation." Others countered with venom. "Do you want them to notice? Do you want them to come? Leave the seat alone." Vela stood at the edge of the chamber, his satchel heavy at his side. The words of the crystal and the fragments of the old records spun in his head. He knew now Earth was no accident, no forgotten world. Their absence was deliberate, and their silence was more dangerous than any speech they could have given. As the session ended, the Council leaders shouted louder than ever before, and in their noise they did not see the quiet historian walking out. They did not see his shaking hands or the fear in his eyes. In the shadows of his quarters, Vela pulled the crystal free once again. He pressed it to his reader, desperate for more. The hologram of the old elder flickered to life, broken and fading. But this time, a new part of the message emerged. Words he had not heard before. "They will ask, they always ask. And when they do, tell them this: humanity is not gone. Humanity waits, and if they rise again, the galaxy will not survive their return." The hologram cut out, leaving only silence. Vela sat frozen, the truth pounding inside him. Humanity had not vanished. Humanity was waiting, and the Council, in their arrogance, was about to summon them back. The screen fades to black. The Council chamber was louder than it had been in decades. Voices rose in fury, fear, and desperation. The empty chair of Earth sat in the center, silent and unmoving, yet it dominated every word spoken. Delegates of ancient species slammed their fists, wings and claws against their thrones, demanding an end to the mystery. "It is a weakness," shouted the Sci-Fi elder, his scales flashing red with rage. "How long will we pretend? How long will we allow an empty seat to mock us?" "Better empty than filled," hissed the Quor ambassador, her feathers ruffled with unease. "Call them, and you doom us all. Do you not know the stories? Do you not hear the warnings of our ancestors?" The arguments circled like vultures. Over carrion. Some demanded the chair be destroyed, others that Earth finally be summoned. No side gave ground. At last, the High Speaker of the Council, a towering being of light and shifting form, raised his hand for silence. "We will end this debate," the Speaker said. His voice carried the weight of centuries. "We will send an envoy. One ship, one mission. They will travel to Earth, speak with humanity, and return with answers. The age of rumors is over." The chamber erupted once more, but this time it was not argument. It was fear. To travel to Earth, to step upon the world, long whispered as a death world, was a fate none desired. Yet no one could refuse the command of the Speaker. The decision was sealed. The ship chosen was modest, sleek, and diplomatic in design. It carried no heavy weapons, only ceremonial escorts. Within it were carefully selected delegates, brave or perhaps foolish, who agreed to represent the Council. Vela, though not a diplomat, found himself among them. His obsession with Earth had been noticed, and though many disapproved, the Speaker had insisted, "The historian knows more than most. Let him go. He may understand what others do not." The envoy's journey began with silence. Stars drifted past the viewports, endless and cold, yet the closer they drew to Sol system, the more unease spread through the crew. Instruments began to flicker, sensors showed static, and entire navigation charts refused to load. It was as though the system itself did not want to be found. Then they crossed the boundary of soul. At once, half the ship's systems failed. Lights dimmed, gravity wavered, engines coughed, panic spread among the crew, but outside the viewports, the scene was far more terrifying. Earth hung in the void, blue and green, alive and beautiful. But it did not welcome them. It stared at them. Every passenger felt it. Not a world, not a planet, but an eye. Watching, waiting, judging. One delegate whispered, voice shaking, "It feels as if the planet itself knows we are here." The ship drifted into orbit. Attempts to scan the surface ended in static. Attempts to send messages returned only a single signal. It was not words. It was not language. It was a pulse, low and heavy, felt in bone and blood. One word echoed in every mind: leave. The captain ordered the crew to retreat, but it was too late. A signal burst from Earth, latching onto their vessel, pulling them downwards. The envoy ship fell through the clouds, fire licking its sides, alarms, wailing. Then silence. The descent slowed. Invisible hands steadied the ship. It landed with a shudder in a vast city of stone and steel. The crew stumbled out onto the surface. The air was thick, heavy, rich with scents of forest and ocean. The city before them was unlike anything they had ever seen, ruined, abandoned, yet fortified with structures older than their council itself. The ruins seemed alive, humming faintly as if remembering. And then they saw them. Humans. They stepped from the shadows, silent and sharp-eyed. Their forms were familiar yet strange, 2 arms, 2 legs, but every movement was precise, measured, dangerous. Their eyes glowed with a fire that no other species carried. The envoy had studied thousands of alien races, but none had ever made them feel so small. The leader of the humans approached. Tall, broad, and scarred, he wore no crown, no armor, yet his presence filled the square with an authority that crushed the air itself. He said nothing at first. He only looked at the envoy, his gaze piercing as though he could see into their memories, their fears, their very souls. The Serkai delegate tried to speak, stammering. We come in peace. We come on behalf of the Galactic Council. We ask, why? Why is your seat always empty?" The human leader tilted his head, studying them like insects beneath glass. He stepped closer, the envoy instinctively stepping back, though he had made no move of aggression. At last, his voice came, low, steady, and heavy with finality. "You came to ask why our seat is empty." His words carried across the ruined city, echoing against steel and stone. "The question is not why we never came." He paused, eyes narrowing. "The question is whether you truly want the answer." The air grew colder. The ruins seemed to breathe. The envoy felt the weight of his words pressing down on them, crushing their courage. None dared reply. The human leader turned away, gesturing for them to follow. His final words before leading them into the depths of the city made the envoy's hearts falter. "You came looking for truth. Pray you survive it." The screen fades to black. The ruins of the human city were not silent. They hummed. The envoy felt it beneath their feet, a vibration running through the cracked stone and buried steel, like the heartbeat of something vast and ancient. The human leader walked ahead, his steps sure and steady. He carried no weapon, yet each member of the envoy felt as though they followed a predator that had no need for claws. Behind him, more humans appeared. They did not speak. They simply watched, eyes sharp, every gaze heavy enough to make the delegates wish they could vanish back. Into the safety of the stars, Vela, clutching his satchel tight, tried to steady his thoughts. The warnings in the crystal burned in his mind. Humans do not join councils, humans end them. And now, as he followed them deeper into the city, the truth felt close, close enough to suffocate. The path led downwards. The streets dipped into a chasm of steel and concrete. Soon the ruins gave way to something else, vast gates of metal, layered with locks, sealed with symbols no one in the envoy recognized. The human leader pressed his hand against a console of smooth black stone. The gates shuddered, ancient machinery groaning, and with a thunderous roar, they opened. Beyond was a descent into darkness. The humans lit no torches, yet the way forward glowed faintly, lit by walls carved with patterns, circles, lines, strange machines etched into the very bones of the earth. The envoy shivered as they realized this was no city. This was a fortress, and the ruins above had only been its mask. They came at last into a cavern so vast it dwarfed the council chamber itself, and there, standing in silence, were weapons. Rows upon rows of them, their designs older than anything the envoy had ever seen. Colossal engines of war, slumbering like titans in the dark. Some were the size of ships, others towers reaching high into the cavern ceiling. Their surfaces pulsed with faint blue light, as though still alive. The Circi delegate's voice cracked as he whispered, "By the stars! What is this?" The human leader turned, his expression unreadable. "This is why our seat is empty." His hand swept across the cavern, the weapons stretching into shadow. "While you built councils, we built these. While you debated laws, we prepared. Not for conquest, not for pride, but because we remember what you choose to forget." His voice grew colder. "We fought the darkness that nearly ended this galaxy before you were born. We bled while your ancestors still crawled in the mud of their worlds, and when it was done, when the enemy was ash and dust, we swore this truth. Never again." The envoy stood frozen. The human leader stepped closer, his gaze burning into them. "You ask why? Our seat is empty. Because if we sit at your table, we will break it. If we join your council, it will not survive. We are not rulers. We are not diplomats. We are the sword you keep buried, hoping you will never need it again." He paused, his eyes narrowing. "But hope is not enough." The Quor ambassador's feathers trembled as she dared to speak. You mean to threaten us? To rule us by fear?" The leader's gaze hardened. "If we meant to rule you, you would already bow. We mean to survive, and we mean to make sure the galaxy survives with us, whether you like it or not." A silence followed. The cavern seemed to breathe with the sleeping machines, each one whispering of wars fought long before the council was born. Vela's heart pounded. He finally found the courage to step forward. "Then why stay silent? Why leave the seat empty and let the galaxy believe you weak or lost?" The leader studied him for a long moment. His expression softened, though the steel in his eyes did not fade. "Because silence is mercy, because the galaxy was not ready for the truth, and because once we rise again, once humanity takes its place." He looked back at the weapons, the engines of annihilation slumbering in the dark. "Then the galaxy will burn." The envoy felt the weight of his words press down on them like a mountain. There was no arrogance in his tone, no bluster or pride, only certainty. The Quor ambassador's voice was barely a whisper. What are you guarding? What could require this?" The leader gave no answer. He turned and began walking deeper into the cavern. The humans around him followed. At the far end, a massive sealed vault loomed, its surface carved with ancient warnings in languages the envoy barely recognized. The leader stopped before it, resting his hand on the steel. "Pray you never need to know," he said, and then he turned back to the envoy, his voice final. "Take this message to your council. Do not summon us again. Do not force us to rise. For if humanity steps into that chamber, it will not be to join you, it will be to end you. The cavern lights dimmed. The weapons pulsed faintly, as if stirred by his words. The envoy stood frozen, their mission shattered. They had come seeking answers. They had found something far more dangerous. The human leader's last words echoed as they were led back to their ship, the fortress doors sealing behind them. If we sit again, the galaxy will burn. The screen fades to black. The return of... The envoy should have brought relief. Instead, it brought terror. When their ship re-entered the Council's space, the crew looked pale, shaken, and unwilling to speak. They did not cheer. They did not salute. They simply walked off the vessel like prisoners freed from a nightmare. Even the strongest among them avoided the eyes of the waiting press, speaking only in whispers. Word spread faster than light. Delegates whispered in corridors, officers murmured in barracks, and across 1,000 worlds, one phrase surfaced again and again: the humans are awake. In the council chamber, silence fell as the envoy stood before the High Speaker. The Sci-Fi delegate who had once demanded Earth's seat be erased now refused to raise his gaze. The Quor ambassador trembled so visibly that her feathers fell loose across the floor. Even Valor, who had begged to go, could not bring himself to meet the stares of his peers. The High Speaker's voice was calm, but the calmness felt fragile, like glass stretched thin. "Tell us, what did they say? Why is their chair empty still?" The Sci-Fi delegate, once proud and loud, whispered, like a child, "Because if they sit among us, they will end us." The chamber erupted. Cries of outrage clashed with screams of fear. Some delegates shouted that humanity must be destroyed before it could rise. Others begged for peace, insisting the council must never anger them. The voices of thousands of species filled the dome like a storm, drowning every attempt at order. Valor remained silent. He clutched the memory of what he had seen beneath Earth's ruins, the slumbering weapons, the cavern of giants that slept in steel. He remembered the words of the human leader: "If we sit again, the galaxy will burn." No one in this chamber wanted to hear that truth. No one wanted to accept that their entire civilization rested on the silence of one world. But the debate spread, and soon it was no longer a debate. On the outer colonies, citizens demanded answers. Why had the Council hidden Earth's power? Why had they allowed humans a seat at all? Fear became anger. Anger became rebellion. Fleets were mobilized, not against an enemy, but against each other. The Council, once the image of order, cracked under the weight of panic. Whispers turned into plans. Admirals met in secret, speaking words that had been forbidden for centuries. Strike Earth first, strike before they move. Better a burned world than a silent sword hanging above us all. The chamber of the Council filled with chaos day after day, but the whispers of war drowned out reason. Even the High Speaker, luminous and ancient, struggled to restore order. "Peace will be our strength," he said. "War will be our end." But his words fell into a storm of fear, and fear obeyed no law. That night, as Valor studied the ancient crystal once again in his quarters, a new message flickered across the Council's networks. It was not sent by any delegate, not by any race. It came from Earth. The transmission was short. Only 3 words appeared, written in the ancient language of the galaxy's founders. "Do not test us." Every ship, every station, every world received it. And in the silence that followed, the galaxy realized it stood on the edge of fire. The Council had faced wars before. It had endured rebellions, invasions, and crises that shook entire star clusters. But nothing compared to the storm that rose after Earth's message. "Do not test us." The words echoed in every hall, every chamber, every home. Whole worlds froze in silence. Some prayed, others cursed. Yet the Council, in its pride, believed it could control the chaos. They met in secret. Delegates barred the press, silenced the envoys, and spoke only to each other inside the sealed chamber. The High Speaker urged calm, demanded restraint, but his voice was drowned by the voices of fear. The Sci-Fi delegate stood first. His scales rattled as he slammed his hand upon the table. "We are fools if we wait. Do you not see? They warned us, because they plan to move. We must strike Earth now, while they still sit in silence." The Corps ambassador rose next, trembling. "Strike Earth? That planet is a tomb world, a death world. Do you think your fleets can survive their soil, their storms, their beasts? They thrive where none of us could live a day." But others, spurred on by panic, nodded at Sci-Fi's call. One by one, voices joined the chorus. "A preemptive strike. End the threat before it wakes. Better to burn a world than to see a galaxy fall." Only a few argued against it. The elder of the Lorian race, frail and wise, begged them to listen. "Do you not understand? Their seat is empty because they chose it so. They could have claimed their place long ago. Instead, they stayed their hand. If we break that silence, it will be the last act we ever take. But fear is louder than wisdom." The council voted. The decision was sealed with trembling hands and hushed voices. A fleet would be assembled, the largest in council history. Thousands of ships drawn from every member world would converge upon Earth. Their mission was simple: destroy humanity before it could rise again. When the decree was signed, a shadow fell across the chamber. Vela sat in the corner, silent. He had seen the sleeping war machines, the eyes of steel buried beneath Earth's ruins. He had heard the warning given to him directly: if we sit again, the galaxy will burn. Yet no one listened. His protests were silenced. He was dismissed as a frightened historian, blinded by myth. The Council's mistake was not only in their decision to strike, it was in believing they still held control of events, because Earth already knew. Long before the fleets prepared, human. Satellites woke from dormancy. Hidden beacons buried in moons and asteroids blinked to life. And in the deep silence of space, a human warship, older than the Council itself, opened its eyes for the first time in 10,000 years. The Council thought they were moving in secret, but every word, every plan, every ship order was already known to the very ones they sought to destroy. When the first of the fleets departed their docks, they did not know they were marching into a trap older than their civilization. The mistake had been made, and soon the galaxy would pay for it. Beneath the council chamber, where the galaxy's leaders had met for millennia, there was a silence older than the council itself. Few knew what lay buried under those polished floors, and none dared ask. The great chamber had been built upon ruins that had belonged to a people long absent. That people was humanity. It began with a tremor. Delegates in the chamber thought it was a quake from a distant moon impact. But the floor shuddered again, harder this time, rattling the seats of every race. The ancient iron chair of Earth groaned, its surface splitting as if something beneath pressed against it. Panic erupted. Guards rushed in, alarms wailed, but none could stop what came next. The floor cracked open. Stone shattered, metal tore, and from beneath the council rose something vast, black steel, lined with markings none had seen in living memory. A warship, no larger than a cruiser but radiating power older than empires, forced its way upward into the chamber. Delegates fled. Some screamed, others fell to their knees. The crest of Earth burned across its hull, glowing with fire, as systems long dormant roared to life. Vela, standing frozen at the edge of the chaos, felt his heart stop. He had read the warnings, the legends, but seeing it was different. Humanity had not abandoned their seat. They had placed their warship beneath it, watching silently for the day the council broke faith. A voice filled the chamber, low and cold, echoing in every language at once. You voted to strike. You voted for war. And war you shall have. Delegates collapsed in terror as the ship's guns rotated, not firing, only aiming. Every beam cannon, every missile bay, every weapon pointed upward, through the dome, toward the stars where the fleets of the Council gathered. It was no ordinary warship. It was a sentinel, tied to networks that stretched across the galaxy. As it awoke, signals surged outward. Across barren moons, ancient machines stirred. On forgotten stations, human banners unfurled in holograms. The galaxy's sky itself seemed to change, as though Earth's shadow had fallen over every world. The Council had believed Earth's silence was weakness. Now they learned it was restraint. Vela whispered the words he had read on the crystal, the words no one had wanted to hear. If humanity sits among you again, the galaxy will burn. The warship beneath the seat began to rise higher, breaking through the chamber ceiling, tearing apart the heart of the Council. Delegates scrambled to their ships, but many already knew escape would mean nothing. The fleets they had sent against Earth would soon be the first to fall. The empty seat of Earth was no longer empty. It had been filled by steel, fire, and vengeance, waiting patiently in silence. The galaxy's greatest mistake had woken its deadliest guardian. The galaxy had seen many wars, but never anything like this. When the human warship rose from beneath the Council chamber, it was not just a weapon, it was a message. The iron seat that had remained empty for centuries had never been a symbol of absence. It was a seal, a warning, and a lock upon something the galaxy was never meant to disturb. The delegates watched in horror as the ship hovered. Above the shattered chamber, its shadow stretching across the Council world. The skies thundered as its weapons pulsed with restrained power, yet it did not fire, not yet. A voice, calm and terrible, echoed again through every system, every ship, every world. We gave you peace, we gave you silence, we gave you time to grow without fear, and still you chose fear. Across the stars, the Council fleets that had been sent to strike Earth began to vanish from the networks. One by one, their signals winked out, entire armadas erased in silence. No wreckage, no cries for help, only the cold certainty that they were gone. Panic rippled through the Council worlds. Billions watched from their homes as human transmissions filled their skies, not with threats, but with memories, images of wars fought long before the Council was born, battles where humanity had stood alone against ancient empires and won. They saw worlds burned to ash, fleets shattered, tyrants humbled, and then they saw something worse. The humans had not merely fought those wars, they had ended them. Every empire that once rivaled humanity had been erased, their names forgotten, by all but human memory. This was the secret the Council had feared. The reason Earth's seat had remained empty. Humanity had not come to the Council because the Council was a child's game to them. They had already ruled galaxies, already broken empires greater than anything that now existed. The empty chair had not been an invitation, it had been mercy. Vela stood among the ruins of the chamber, tears burning his eyes. He finally understood the words of the crystal, the warnings he had uncovered, the silence of humanity. They didn't refuse the seat, he whispered. They left it empty, because to sit would mean to rule, and they do not want to rule us. The human warship turned its weapons away, retracting its cannons, folding its fire back into stillness. The voice spoke one final time. Remember this, we are not your enemies, but test us again, and the stars will remember our name. Then, as suddenly as it had risen, the warship descended once more, sinking into the earth beneath the shattered chamber, vanishing into silence, as though it had never moved. The iron chair remained, empty, unbroken, untouched, as if nothing had changed, but everything had changed. The galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. Their silence was no longer a mystery. It was a threat. It was a promise. It was the secret that had shaken the entire galaxy. and above it all, the empty seat of Earth waited, still unclaimed, still watching, still warning.